You were told that fiber is essential, that without fiber, your digestion stops, your guts die, and you become constipated. So when people switch to high protein, high or medium fat, low carb diet, they suddenly become constipated. And everybody says, oh, you see, you need fiber. But what if the explanation is incomplete? What if the real problem is not fiber at all? What if it's your gut microbiome? What if it's your adaptation process, your electrolyte balance, hydration, or simply the fact that your body is still trying to adapt to the new diet? Because today I'm going to show you something that most people never hear. There are actual studies showing that reducing fiber can improve constipation in some people. And before people start panicking in the comments, I'm not saying that fiber is evil. I'm not saying that nobody benefits from fiber. What I'm saying is that idea that fiber is essential for everybody is absolutely not supported as strongly as most people think. And the reason this matters is that thousands of people switch to some type of ketogenic diet, they lose body fat, they improve blood sugar, they feel mentally sharper, but one problem appears, and this is constipation. And immediately they think, this diet is unhealthy. But what if the real issue is adaptation? Because your gut microbiome, your bile production, your digestive enzymes, your electrolyte status, and the food volume, they all change dramatically on a low-carb diet. And if you don't understand this transition, then you may blame fiber, while the real problem may be somewhere else. Let's start with the obvious problem. Why some people become constipated on low-carb diet? There are several reasons for that. First of all, the food volume drops dramatically. So if you think about it, somebody goes for years on cereals, oats, rice, pasta, bread, fruit, vegetables, and similar, to steak, eggs, fish, cheese, some vegetables, healthy fats. The total bulk of the food that enters the gut becomes much smaller. Because of that change, less waste enters the colon, and many people mistake less stool for constipation, and this is not the same thing. If your body absorbs more nutrients efficiently, there may simply be less waste to eliminate. The second reason are electrolytes, and this is a big issue. When people switch to low-carb diets, their insulin levels drop, and when insulin levels drop, the kidneys exert more sodium and water. This means that sodium drops, water drops, potassium balance changes, and magnesium may be low. This is one of the biggest mistakes that people do when they go on low-carb diets. I devoted a whole video on that subject, so you may watch that. So what happens? They increase protein, but they do not increase salt, fluids, magnesium, and also potassium-rich foods. Now, the third reason is that fat intake is often too low. Again, I explained this in a separate video, and this is a very common mistake when people go on low-carb diets. They increase the protein, but they don't increase the fat. So many people think they are doing it, but actually they are not. They are actually on extremely high protein, but very low fat diet. Now, the problem with that is that lack of fat in the diet is the worst combination for digestion. Main reason for that is that fat stimulates production of bile, and bile helps lubricate digestion, and also it stimulates bowel motility. Some people become constipated simply because they have removed carbs in the new diet, but they didn't replace the energy in form of fat, so they didn't increase the fat intake. Now here is where things become more controversial. For decades, people were told that more fiber fixes constipation, but some research started showing something fascinating. For example, in 2012, study published in the World Journal of Gastroenterology followed patients with chronic constipation. The research found that reducing or even stopping dietary fiber improved constipation symptoms in many participants. In fact, those who completely stopped fiber had more frequent bowel movements, less bloating, less straining, and less abdominal pain. I will post the links of all these researches in the description, so please click on them, and then you can read the whole research and many others on these topics. So this completely contradicts mainstream messaging. Now, why that might be happening? Because when you add more bulk in already slow-moving system, that doesn't always eliminate traffic jam. One researcher compared it to adding more cars into congested traffic. So if transit is slow, adding more material can even worsen the problem. And this is where gut microbiome becomes essential, because the fiber itself is not magic. So fiber is primarily food for bacteria. And your response to fiber depends heavily on which bacteria dominates your gut. That obviously responds to the food that you have been eating maybe for years. Also, how adaptive your microbiome is. What are your inflammation levels and even stress? Some people can ferment fiber extremely well. Other, probably majority, experience bloating, gas, pain, constipation, and IBS symptoms. Now, there is a growing evidence that gut microbiome composition strongly influences how people respond to fiber intake. So the real question may not be how much fiber do humans need. The real question may be what type of gut environment does this individual currently have. Now, there is something very important that most people probably think about, and they can say, but look at herbivores. They eat predominantly fiber, they eat grass, and they are super healthy. They don't have all these issues that we have. So obviously that fiber must be essential. It must be healthy and good, because if it's good for them, it should be good for us. But this is absolutely not the case. So we cannot be compared to herbivores. Herbivores are not like humans. For example, a cow or a sheep or a deer, they can digest fiber successfully while we cannot. And the reason for that is that most herbivores have multiple stomach chambers. They also have vastly different digestive anatomy and specialized fiber fermenting bacteria. So if you take, for example, a cow has 4 stomachs. So the first one, the rumen, acts as a giant fermentation chamber. Inside that rumen, inside that chamber, there are trillions of bacteria that live there, and their only role is to break down cellulose, which is tough structural fiber found in plants. So now these bacteria, they convert fiber into short-chain fatty acids, which the animal uses for energy. So they're basically using that fiber for energy. We simply cannot do that. In our case, fiber is completely undigested and it doesn't have any nutritional value because we cannot use it for energy or anything else. So when cow digests fiber, what happens is first the cow extracts nutrients from both the fermented material and even the bacteria themselves. So they are simply relying on those fatty acids and amino acids from bacteria. Humans cannot do that because, first of all, we don't have 4 stomachs. We don't have that big fermentation chamber, and we don't have the same cellulose digesting capacity. So in humans, the fiber simply passes through the digestive tract largely undigested. Yes, some fermentation happens in the large intestine, in the colon, but compared to herbivores, our fiber digestion is completely limited. So clearly the physiology of a cow is not the same as the physiology of humans. So we do not benefit from fiber as other animals do. For example, gorilla, which is very close cousin to us, can simply digest fiber because he has the same digestive chamber, massive, in which gorilla ferments the fiber. We don't have that. And this is why they can thrive on high fiber diet. We humans, we cannot. We are more omnivores, so we are adapted to digesting different types of food. But again, our fiber digestibility is extremely limited comparing to other herbivores. Now, there is another very controversial point, and this is that excessive fiber can sometimes interfere with nutrient absorption. For example, protein, minerals, and amino acid uptake. And the reason for that is that fiber can speed intestinal transit too much in some people. So basically, materials which are in the small intestine and in the colon need time to get absorbed, to get through the system into the bloodstream. But if you have too much fiber in your digestive system, that amount of nutrients will simply be pushed quickly out. Also, fiber binds to certain minerals, takes them out. Also dilutes digestive enzymes, which is another problem, especially with people in the later stages of their lives, when the digestion slows down simply because of the weakened digestive enzymes. So fiber is not going to help you there. And as I mentioned, fiber can physically reduce the nutrient contact time. So the nutrients get pushed quickly out. So there is a research showing that very high fiber diets may reduce protein digestibility and amino acid absorption efficiency, particularly from plant proteins. And this is the reason why, for example, athletes, bodybuilders, and older adults, and also everybody trying to maximize protein synthesis, simply will not benefit from high amount of fiber in their diets, because they will need maximum absorption of nutrients, especially protein. And if your goal is obviously recovery, muscle growth, hormone production, strength, muscle retention with aging, digestibility matters enormously. So this is again the reason why when you eat meat, eggs, fish, dairy, you consistently perform better, simply because your digestion is much better, is much more efficient than when you eat plant food, plant proteins. Now, this doesn't automatically mean that fiber is bad for you and it is harmful, but it does mean that the simplistic ideas that more fiber is always healthier is absolutely biologically naive. Now I want to tell you something very important, and this is that microbiome adaptation. So your microbiome adapts to what you consistently eat. If somebody eats high sugar, high carbohydrate diet, high processed carbs, seeds, oils, ultra-processed food, for example, for 20, 30 years, their microbial environment adapts to that diet. Now, when they suddenly switch to meat, eggs, fish, fats, low carbohydrates, they expect their digestion to instantly function perfectly. But this is not going to happen because microbiome adapts over time. So that adaptation will take some time. So research shows that ketogenic and low-carb diets significantly alter gut microbiome composition. Some bacteria decrease while the other bacteria increase. And during that transition, so remember that this is the problem always, people may experience constipation, diarrhea, bloating, gas, and temporary digestive instability. People come often to me and ask the same question. Oh, I moved to low-carb diets, high protein, medium fat, as you recommend, but I became constipated. This is not good for me. Or somebody would say, oh, I get diarrhea by doing this. But that doesn't mean that the diet is unhealthy. That means simply that you need some time to adapt. Your ecosystem is adapting. And now there is an Australian doctor who brilliantly explains this very well, and this is Dr. Paul Mason. I will leave also the link so you can watch Dr. Paul Mason explaining in detail everything about these issues and breaking down into smallest detail everything that comes down to our biochemistry and our gut biome and adaptation to high protein, high to medium fat diet, low carb. So if you're interested to learn about this more in detail, then click on the link that I will post in the description, and you can listen to Dr. Paul Mason and his brilliant elaboration of this subject. He, for example, discusses how low-carb diets affect gut health and why fiber may not be essential for everyone. And what is fascinating is that many people on carnivore or ketogenic diet eventually report improved digestion, reduced bloating, reduced IBS symptoms, and normalized bowel movements. Now let's ask the real question. Is fiber biologically essential? And technically, no, it's not. Because we know what is essential in human diet. We have essential amino acids, we have essential fatty acids, the essential vitamins, minerals, and these are called essential because we have to take them through the food from outside and bring them into our system. Well, when it comes to fiber, there is no such a thing as fiber deficiency, simply because fiber is not essential. Now, that does not mean that fiber cannot be beneficial for some people. Some people will benefit from eating some type of fiber, especially during the transition period. So fiber intake, for example, from berries, from avocado, low-carb vegetables, also fermented foods, some nuts and seeds, they may help some people during transition period. And obviously, if you are not on low-carb diet, but you're still eating enough protein, maybe not enough fat, this type of fiber can benefit you. The problem today is that nutrition has become ideological, and I'm always mentioning that I'm not extremely drastic about any type of diet. I'm usually suggesting principles which are beneficial for most people. They were absolutely beneficial for almost all my clients, including myself, my son, and when it comes to dietary advice. So the problem is when the nutrition becomes ideological, and then you have one side which says you have to eat huge amount of fiber in order to have healthy gut. Other side says you must not eat any fiber. But reality is very different. Now, in reality, people have different microbiomes, they have different metabolic conditions, but there is one important thing that actually applies to everyone. And this is that most of the time, most foods which are considered high in fiber are very high in carbohydrates at the same time. For example, oats, cereals, bread, high fiber pasta, rice, similar foods, they are very high in carbohydrates. So their glycemic load is going to be very high. And when we are talking about fiber intake, you must differentiate between food that contain fiber but not high amount of carbohydrates. And if your insulin sensitivity is not high, if you're insulin resistant, if you are overweight, if your hormone production is not satisfactory, you have to avoid high carbohydrate foods, especially the ones like, again, cereals, oats, grains, breads, beans, and many processed high fiber products. They will simply hit your insulin through the roof, and that will cause all metabolic problems that I have mentioned in so many different videos. So sometimes when people focus on high carbohydrate intake, they simply ignore the consequences they may come from foods which are high in fiber but at the same time high in carbohydrates. So again, if you're struggling with insulin resistance, obesity, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, or stubborn fat gain, this issue is extremely important. So let me give you a practical advice. What should you do if you actually become constipated after switching to high protein, high to medium fat and low carb diet? First thing, you need to increase sodium. Sodium is extremely important, the most important mineral in the body. And this alone can help many people. Second, you should drink more water. Third, you need to increase magnesium because most people are usually deficient in magnesium. Fourth, you should eat fat. So don't fear fat. Fat is essential. I have devoted a whole video on fat, recently published, I think a few days ago. And sometimes digestion can improve dramatically when you start eating eggs, whole eggs obviously, fatty meats, olive oil, butter, and animal fat is found in animal food. So this is most common problem with when people switch to high protein diet. Now the fifth advice is you need to give your microbiome time to adapt. Sometimes it may take weeks. In some people it will take days. But depending on your previous gut microbial environment, if you were eating high carbohydrate diet for years, for decades, it may take a little bit longer. But you need to allow your microbiome simply time to adapt to the new digestive environment, meaning the new food that will enter the system. Now, sixth advice is that some people may genuinely benefit from moderate fiber intake. That doesn't mean massive bowls of cereals and oats and stuff like that. But that means foods like, for example, avocados, berries, cucumbers, zucchini, also fermented vegetables. In reasonable amounts, these foods can help many people to thrive very, very efficiently on high protein, high to medium fat diet, low carb diet. And you don't have to exclude them completely. So you have to find out actually what works the best for you. Most of the time, for most people that I have trained, that I'm in contact with, people are thriving perfectly on high protein, high to medium fat diet, very low carbs or zero carbs. But some people, including myself, I occasionally eat some vegetables, but they're usually cucumbers, zucchini, avocado, fermented vegetables as well I have often, but I may have it 2-3 times per week. This simply works for me. So you don't have to be 100% drastic. Yes, you can if it works for you, but if you experience any issues, this advice may be very beneficial for you. And remember that exercise matters when it comes to your digestion and elimination, obviously. Stress matters, sleep matters, and meal frequency. So your digestive system is not simply isolated from the rest of your physiology. So everything matters. The bigger problem today is that people think that symptoms automatically prove causation. So if somebody removes carbs and becomes constipated, they immediately conclude, oh, humans required more fiber, and this diet is not healthy, is not good for me. I got constipated, therefore I'm going back to my old diet. But physiology is more complex than that, and the body is adaptive. And as I mentioned, you have to allow your gut microbiome to adapt. It may take days, in some cases it may take weeks. Many people who have initially struggled with this issue later experienced improved digestion, improved metabolic health, less bloating, more stable energy, and reduced inflammation. So you need to understand that your gut is not just the pipe. It's simply an ecosystem. And ecosystems adapt. They are complex, and I think that I have helped you understand the complexity of that ecosystem. So no, fiber is not universally essential in the way that people thought. But also that does not mean that everybody should eliminate fiber completely. The real issue is understanding First of all, your digestive system. Second, your microbiome. Third, your metabolic health. And fourth, your adaptation process. Because constipation on the low carb does not mean automatically that the diet is wrong. Sometimes it simply means that your body is in transitional period from one metabolic environment into another. And once you understand that, you will stop blindly following dogma and start understanding our physiology. After 40 years in bodybuilding, competing 46 times, winning 17 titles, and coaching over 3,500 clients, I have published for you 12 eBooks which are fully loaded with everything that you always wanted to know about bodybuilding. So if you want to deepen your knowledge, expand your horizons, and stop wasting time in the gym, simply click on that link in the comments and you can download my eBooks. Also, I have published for you Bodybuilding Blueprint course in which I personally demonstrate and explain the most effective exercises for all major muscle groups. So if you want to learn how to train in perfect form, stop wasting time in the gym, and prevent injuries, simply click on the link in the comments and you can access my Bodybuilding Blueprint course. So guys, if you have enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel, like the video, share the video, and also send me your comments. And I will see you in the next video.